You're alone in a room, nobody is watching, and then you say it out loud to yourself. Maybe you were working through a problem. Maybe you dropped something and said exactly what you were thinking. Or maybe you were giving yourself a little pep talk in the mirror. Whatever it was, your brain was doing something remarkable. And science is only just starting to understand what. Talking to yourself, whether out loud or in your head, is called inner speech. And almost every human being on Earth does it. Studies estimate that inner speech accounts for somewhere between 1/4 of all our waking mental activity. That means for a significant chunk of every single day, you are essentially talking to yourself in your own head. And for most of us, that voice sounds remarkably like our own speaking voice. But here's the first strange thing. Not everyone experiences it this way. A significant number of people estimates range from 5 to 15% of the population report having no inner voice at all. No internal monologue. No voice narrating their thoughts. Just images, feelings, and concepts without words. Many of these people had no idea this was unusual until someone told them. Which raises an immediate question. If some people have no inner voice, what exactly is inner speech for? The short answer? A lot. Inner speech is not just background noise. It is one of the most powerful cognitive tools your brain has. The first function, planning and problem solving. When you talk through a problem out loud or in your head, you are using language to organize your thoughts into a linear sequence. Your brain thinks in multiple streams simultaneously: images, emotions, sensations, abstract concepts, all at once. Inner speech forces all of that into a single, ordered channel, which is why thinking out loud often helps you solve things faster. The second function, self-regulation. Your inner voice is partly how you control your own behavior. When you tell yourself, don't do it, or stay calm, or just finish this one thing, that is your inner voice actively managing your impulses. Studies show that children who talk to themselves while doing tasks perform significantly better than children who stay silent. This is why children often narrate everything they do out loud. It is not a knowing habit. It is active cognitive development. The third function, emotional processing. When something difficult happens, your inner voice helps you make sense of it. Narrating your experience in the third person, saying, Bob feels anxious right now, instead of I feel anxious, has been shown to reduce emotional distress significantly. It creates psychological distance, like watching yourself from the outside, which gives you more control over your reaction. So where does this inner voice actually come from? What is physically happening in your brain when you talk to yourself? Brain imaging studies show that when you engage in inner speech, your brain activates the same regions it uses for actual spoken language. Broca's area, the region that produces speech. Wernicke's area, the region that processes language. Both active, both working. Even more remarkable, tiny muscle movements in your throat and tongue have been detected during inner speech, as if your body is almost speaking the words, but stopping itself just before they come out. Your body is preparing to speak. Your brain intercepts it, and what you experience is the thought without the sound. Scientists call this subvocalization, and it is one reason why speed reading is so much harder than it sounds. When you read, your brain naturally subvocalizes each word, running it through your inner speech system, which creates an invisible speed limit on how fast you can process text. But before we move on, here is something that might make you feel a lot better about talking to yourself. Multiple studies have found that people who talk to themselves more frequently score higher on cognitive tests, memory, focus, goal setting, and problem solving. The more you engage your inner voice, whether silently or out loud, the stronger the connections between your language centers and your executive function areas become. Think of it like a mental muscle. Every time you use your inner voice deliberately, you are exercising the exact same networks that drive intelligence, creativity, and self-control. Albert Einstein famously talked to himself constantly. So did Nikola Tesla. So did many of the most creative and productive minds in history. This is sometimes called the Einstein effect, though that name is informal. The underlying research is real. When you give yourself instructions out loud, say, narrating the steps of a task, your brain processes those instructions more deeply than if you simply think them. The spoken or subvocalized word creates a second encoding and auditory memory trace on top of the visual or conceptual one, which is why students who read their notes out loud retain them significantly better than students who read silently. So the next time someone looks at you strangely for muttering to yourself, you can tell them you are literally optimizing your brain. Talking to yourself is not a quirk, it is a feature. But what about talking to yourself out loud, not just in your head, but actually speaking? That is a slightly different phenomenon. And for a long time, it carried a stigma. People assumed it was a sign of eccentricity at best, mental instability at worst. The research tells a very different story. In one famous experiment, participants were asked to find a specific object in a supermarket. Half were told to repeat the object's name out loud. Half were told to stay silent. The group that talked to themselves found the object significantly faster. Saying a word out loud activates additional sensory channels. Hearing your own voice reinforces the mental image and makes your brain search more efficiently. This is also why athletes talk to themselves during competition, why surgeons narrate their procedures, why teachers think out loud when solving problems in front of students. It is not a nervous habit. It is a performance tool. But inner speech has a darker side too, because that same voice that helps you solve problems and regulate your emotions, it can also turn against you. Negative self-talk, the inner critic that tells you you're not good enough, that you'll fail, that everyone noticed your mistake, is the same inner speech system being used against yourself. And it is remarkably easy for the brain to get stuck in this mode, replaying a conversation, rehearsing a worry, reliving an embarrassing moment on loop. Psychologists call this rumination, and it is one of the strongest predictors of anxiety and depression. The good news, because inner speech is a skill, it can be retrained. Cognitive behavioral therapy works largely by teaching people to notice their inner speech and deliberately replace negative self-talk with more balanced, accurate thinking. Which means your inner voice isn't fixed. It isn't just something that happens to you. It is something you can learn to use more deliberately. But here's the question that makes this more than just psychology. When you talk to yourself, who is talking and who is listening? Your brain is simultaneously generating the voice and responding to it as if you are two people in one conversation. Some philosophers argue that this is the origin of consciousness itself, that the experience of having a self emerges from this internal dialogue between different parts of the brain, that you don't just have thoughts, you narrate your own existence. Every decision, every memory, every plan, every regret, run through the same inner voice in the same private theater that no one else can ever access. So next time you catch yourself talking to yourself, don't be embarrassed. You're not losing your mind, you're using it. Let me know in the comments, do you have a strong inner voice? Or are you one of the people who thinks in images instead of words? If you enjoyed this, hit like and subscribe. Bob Wonders has a lot more questions to ask. Thanks for watching.